Alright, so the Premier League is coming back. And it's coming very soon. So why not make a Premier League predictions video, I guess. Premier League table predictions video. So yeah, let's get straight to it. So first off, I have Fulham finishing bottom. Yes, I know a lot of people are putting them there, probably 19th, 18th, for sure relegation. But honestly, I'm kind of reluctant to put them there because I believe they just signed or loaned in a pretty decent goalkeeper, Alphonse Areola, I believe. I don't know, that could mix up the table a bit, but I don't know. I still see them finishing 20th. I don't feel like they have a strong enough team to stay within the Prem. I think they're strong enough for the Championship, but not strong enough for the Prem. So yeah, Fulham 20th. Next up, I have West Brom finishing 19th. I know, same thing as most people are putting West Brom low there, but same thing with Fulham. I don't think they have a strong enough team. They've brought in some decent reinforcements, but still don't think they're strong enough to stay within the Prem. So yeah, 19th. Now 18th. This is a bit controversial. A lot of people think this team can do well, possibly even fight for like maybe 15th possibly, but I don't see it. I think Aston Villa 18th, going down. They were so close last season. I think they were that close. Like, they were so close that they will end up dropping this season. They brought in some decent reinforcements, like Ollie Watkins, I believe, from Brentford. And then they're keeping Jack Grealish, well, for now. If he goes, I think it's definite that they're going down. But yeah, I don't see them strong enough. At least they didn't put good enough performances last season to make me put them higher. But yeah, I think 18th. I think it's very unlucky for them, but yeah, 18th Aston Villa. Now, just escaping relegation, I believe it's Crystal Palace. I know a lot of people like Crystal Palace, and they haven't been finishing quite well these past few seasons, and especially if they lose their main talisman in Wilfried Zaha, I think they could even get relegated if they lose him. But yeah, I think they'll just escape. I do think Zaha will leave, but in case he doesn't, I think they'll survive if he stays. But if they don't keep him, then I think it's Championship for them. But I don't know. There's a possibility. But yeah, 17th for Crystal Palace. Now, next up, I have West Ham finishing 16th. Kind of hurts me to put West Ham because I like West Ham, and I do think they have some pretty good players, and they had a really strong finish to the season last time. They did nearly get relegated, but if their form could carry on to this season, maybe they could get higher. But I don't know. I feel like they're way too inconsistent. They'll get way too many losses, maybe way too many draws. But yeah, I don't think they're bringing in enough players, if at all, to actually like solidify their defense or their midfield or their attack. Honestly, their attack seems a bit lackluster. And if they lose a few players, then yeah, even worse. But yeah, 16th. Now 15th. 15th, I have Brighton. Brighton, I wanted to put them higher. I really did. But looking over some stats and some like other just things about Brighton, I don't see them finishing too high. Possibly a bit higher than 15th, but I do see them like fighting against relegation. But I do think they can do it easily. I think they'll be comfortable. Not too comfortable, but I think they'll be comfortably away from relegation zone. And I see them in finishing 15th, despite their decent squad. Now 14th. This is also very controversial because of what happened last season and because of how people think of this team for this season. I have Sheffield finishing in 14th. I know Sheffield United, a lot of people think that, like they'll just drop a few positions, not too far, but I don't see it. I really don't see it. They don't have a strong enough team. They have, honestly, I think they have a weaker team than most teams, like possibly even Fulham. But like, I do think in their manager and their will to fight on, I do think that'll propel them up to 14th. I don't really see them higher than 11th, and I don't see them, but I also don't see them lower than like 16th. But I do think 14th is a good position for them. I don't think they'd be too sad about that. But and they could definitely improve. But yeah. Also, they brought in some pretty decent signings and loans, I believe. So good on them. Now, next up, 13th, Leeds. Leeds United. I really like that team. Also, their manager, Marcelo Bielsa. I do think he's a really good manager. I do think he could possibly even propel them even further than the 13th. But I do think 13th would be like a minimum. Maybe not a minimum, but a decent position for them. A decent finish for them. Because, I mean, they brought in the likes of, Rodrigo Moreno, who I've always thought was a good striker. A really good striker. But yeah, I do think he can do really well for them, along with all those other players. So yeah, I think Leeds finishing 13th is a decent shout. Now 12th, I have Newcastle. I also really like Newcastle. A lot of people don't. A lot of people do, but it is what it is. 12th, I see it kind of low for them, but I also put them in 12th because I do think that their defense is quite weak. You're gonna hear me repeat that a lot. Their defense, but I do think that their attacking power is strengthened now with the likes of Ryan Fraser, who else? Callum Wilson, Joelinton. I think he'll do a better job than he did last season. I don't think he'll score way too many goals. I do think he'll be close or around the 9 goals at least. I think that's a decent season for a Premier League striker, at least for Newcastle. But yeah, I don't see them too high, but I also don't see them too low. I could be wrong, but 12th place for Newcastle. Now 11th place, I have Southampton. A lot of people, I don't know, Southampton is a tricky one because I could see them going so much lower, possibly even fighting relegation. But I could also see them a bit higher. Maybe not cracking into the top 10, top 6 or anything, but maybe. But I don't know. I don't have too much faith in them, but I do think they're a really good team. I mean, Danny Ings was so close to getting the Golden Boot last season, and also they brought in Willem Salisu from Valladolid, I believe. I think that's a really good signing. So yeah, I think Southampton will do fairly well in 11th place. So good luck, Southampton. Now 10th place, I have Burnley. I think Burnley is just a very solid club, very stable, very comfortable. Finish mid-table every season. I think it'll happen again, and I think they'll reach a bit higher. I think they'll finish 10th. I think 10th is a very solid finish. Maybe a bit too high. I think maybe they should be a bit lower, but I don't know. With the likes of the other teams, I think Burnley can do well. I won't see them signing anyone too big, but I do see them doing pretty well. So yeah, Burnley in 10th. Now top 9. This is tough. This is tough because I see a major fight going on for European places, mainly Europa League, because top 4 is something in and of itself. But anyways, 9th place. I really, really hate putting this team in this place because I love this team. They're not my favorite, but they're up there. They're up there. I don't really have a favorite, but Leicester City, 9th place. I hate doing it, but I just think they haven't brought enough players, and I don't think their team is strong enough compared to the other teams that are left. Plus, the fact that they're gonna have to fight in Europa League, that's gonna take a toll on them. I don't think it'll be too strenuous for them, and I can easily see them finishing higher than 9th, possibly even 5th. But I don't know. I think the other teams are just too strong. But I'm sorry, Leicester and Leicester City fans, but I'm putting Leicester City in 9th. Now, another one that I hate to put in this position, but Wolves, put them in 8th. I love Wolves. Also a really good team. Very solid. They did lose a pretty big player for them, Matt Doherty, to Tottenham. I do think that's going to be a big loss. Not too big, but I do think that's a pretty big loss. Maybe if they use Adama Traore there, or someone else, if they bring someone else. Yeah, maybe, but I think 8th is another solid finish for them. I think it would be a really good season. as always. I could also see them finishing a bit higher because I don't think they're done spending money. I believe they brought in Fabio Silva from Porto, I believe, the young striker. I do think he can do well, but I don't think he'll get enough game time. Just like Patrick Cutrone. I don't think he'll get enough game time. And maybe he'll get a few goals. Maybe he could prove me wrong. Maybe he could be the top goal scorer for them. But yeah, Wolves are still a very solid team. They'll do better than the rest of the teams that I've listed. But yeah, I don't think they can beat the likes of like other bigger teams. But I do think it's a solid finish for them. And come on, Raul Jimenez, one of my favorite players. Now, next up, 7th. Bit controversial, especially when you hear my 6th pick, but I have Arsenal finished 7th. I like Arsenal, not one of my favorites, but I don't think they're strong enough, despite the fact that they've brought in some pretty good players. Brought in Willian on a free transfer, and they brought in, who was it, Gabriel from Lille. I think those are 2 great signings, and then also they're bringing back William Saliba, who was out on loan. I do think those are really good signings / loan backs, I guess, or whatever. But I don't think that'll make them strong enough to crack the top 6 or even the top 4. I really don't. I can see them doing it. I don't think they'll crack the top 4. I don't think anyone will crack the top 4 apart from the 4 that I'll mention. But I do think Arsenal's a strong team. But I can definitely see them 6th, maybe 5th. But lower, possibly, if Leicester City and Wolves do better. But I don't know. I think 7th will be their finish. Alright, anyways, 6th place. This is probably the most controversial pick I have out of the whole bunch. But I have Everton finishing 6th. I know a lot of people think Everton are bottle jobs, or they're just terrible, or maybe they're just not consistent enough. I don't think so. I think this is actually going to be the season where they actually do really well, especially with the recruitments that they brought in. James Rodriguez, Allen, and Decore. Those players, I think they're going to do really well. I mean, Decore has experience in the Premier League. He had a pretty decent season with Watford, despite the fact that they got relegated. Allen has experience with Carlo Ancelotti, Everton's new manager. And then also James Rodriguez has also played under Carlo Ancelotti. And plus, this will be his first full season in the Premier League. So I do think he won't do as well as before. But I think that Everton as a whole will be really happy if they finish in 6th. And I do think they can make it. Is it possible? I mean, is it likely? Not really, considering the other teams. But I can see them doing it. I don't think they can get higher than 5th. I really don't. Maybe 5th is possible. I don't see it though. It's most likely that they'll finish like 8th, probably even 9th. But I'm going for 6th because they have really good attacking options. Their midfield, as I've mentioned, really solid. Their defense is probably their weakest point. And their goalkeeper, Pickford, is pretty good. So I do think they can just overtake Arsenal. It'll be close. I definitely do think it'll be close between these teams. But yeah, Everton 6th. Now 5th. It was pretty easy for me. Tottenham. I do think Tottenham are a really solid team, but I don't think they're strong enough to crack the last 4, to beat the last 4. They're really good. I mean, Harry Kane, Heung-min Son. There's many more players, but the thing is they get way too many injuries and they're not consistent enough. I mean, Jose Mourinho is a really good coach, really good manager, but I don't know. I don't see him making it to the Champions League, to the Champions League spots. I do think Tottenham are a very strong team, though. Don't get me wrong. I think Harry Kane can even win the Golden Boot this season, but it's if he can stay fit for the most of the season at least. And also the defense doesn't. They're not as solid as they would like to be. You get me? But like, I mean, they did bring in Matt Doherty, and for some reason they brought in Joe Hart as like their 3rd goalkeeper. But if able to bring in a solid center back, possibly they can possibly crack top four, but I just don't see it. They'll probably need possibly even 2 center backs. But fifth is a solid finish for them, I think, especially considering the likes of the other teams, as I've mentioned multiple times before. But yeah, Tottenham fifth, and I do think it'll be a major fight for those European places for Europa League between 5th and 9th. I do think it'll be a tough struggle for all teams. I can see them all mixing around. Leicester could finish 5th, Tottenham could finish 9th, and yada yada yada. But I have them how it is. Anyways, now top 4. This was also a really tough one because I think the remaining 4 can easily win the league. Not easily, but they all have a chance of winning the league. But I think the least likely of which is Man United, Manchester United. I love the team, absolutely love it. Marcus Rashford, Martial, Bruno Fernandes, Mason Greenwood, and if they're able to bring in Jadon Sancho, it'll make them so much stronger. Maybe not much stronger, but they'll definitely be a very solid team, possibly pushing for the title as well. And I think they will. I think they will push for the title. But I don't think they're strong enough to overtake the next 3. The next 3 teams. They're very solid. And I love their attack. Their attack is incredible. But their midfield is really good. Very solid. Bruno Fernandes, Pogba. But I do think they need a solid CDM. They brought in Donny van de Beek, but I don't think he fits that role. I think he's more of a backup to Pogba or Bruno Fernandes. Mainly Bruno Fernandes, because I think he's more of a attacking midfielder. And I love Donny van de Beek. Don't get me wrong, he's an incredible player. Always liked him. I wish he came to Barcelona, but I don't think he's the right player for Man United. I do think he'll do well with him, especially let's say if Bruno Fernandes were to get injured. I do think Donny van de Beek could fill in that role easily like that. But I do think they need a solid CDM and a solid center back, possibly a left back as well, because Brandon Williams and Luke Shaw do get injured quite a bit. But I think they need a strong center back. If they're able to get a strong center back, I think they'll do well. But that's the main problem for me. Their defense is quite weak. Not as weak as some other teams, or honestly not as strong as some other teams that are below them as well. But yeah, I do think 4th for them. They'll make Champions League. I think pretty comfortably. Maybe not too comfortable, but they'll make it. 4th place. Again, I can see them going higher, but Man United 4th place. Now 3rd, the big spenders. The big spenders of the transfer window. Chelsea. I have them finishing 3rd. They could also push for the title, as I said before, but I don't see it because they've brought in a lot of players. But the thing is, they're all proven. In my opinion, they're all proven really good players, but they're from different leagues apart from Ben Chilwell. But they're coming from different leagues. They haven't proved themselves in the Premier League, at least to my knowledge. And like they'll need some time to actually play well and play together well. Play well together. Ugh, whatever. But I do think they'll do decently well. I think they won't outperform how people think, but I think they'll be a bit underwhelming compared to how people are thinking, because they are incredible players. But again, they need time to actually come together as a good team. But with that said, I still think they'll finish 3rd. I mean, they have world-class players. I mean, the likes of Ben Chilwell, like as I said before, Thiago Silva, very solid center back. That'll solidify their defense, not completely, but definitely. Who else? I think they brought in a goalkeeper from Rennes, so I think that's also a pretty good addition to fight for the goalkeeping spot, the first goalkeeping spot against Kepa, if he even stays. And then they also brought in Hakim Ziyech, incredible player. He's quite old, or quite on the older side, but I do think he has a lot of quality, and I do think he could provide a lot. And then also Timo Werner and Kai Havertz, two really good players that I love watching whenever I watch them. They did really well in the Bundesliga, both of them. And yeah, I think they can really do well in the Premier League, but you gotta give them a bit of time. But I still, again, Chelsea already had a really good team. They finished 4th last season, and now with the quality that they've added, they could push for the title. But I don't see them getting over the next 2 teams. So yeah, 3rd for Chelsea. Now, 2nd place. Which one is it going to be? Liverpool or Man City? Liverpool, Man City. 2nd place, I have Liverpool. I know. A lot of people think Liverpool can go back to back, but I don't know. As I've seen before, it's very, very hard to maintain a title, like, because the players would have thought like, oh, we've already won it, we don't need to. Well, I think the mentality that Liverpool has right now is the fact that like we don't need to bring in too many big signings compared to like the likes of Chelsea or Man United or something else. But I do think they need a few signings, maybe as backups, or mainly as backups, because if they don't spend, then they can just probably just go lower and lower as they did before. But I still do think their team is incredible. I think probably their weakest spot, which in my opinion is not even that much of a weak spot, would be one of the center backs. Virgil van Dijk is probably the best center back in the world right now. But they do need another partner next to him. Joe Gomez and Joe Matip are really good, but I feel like they need either at least a few backups or a very strong center back. But maybe not a strong center back, honestly. I'm going back to my word, but their defense is really solid. Trent Alexander-Arnold maybe gets up a bit too much, but they're still very solid. Andrew Robertson, very good left back, probably one of the best at the moment. And then their midfield, you by the names of them, you wouldn't think they're as good, but if you actually look at their performances, they're really solid. Henderson, Fabinho, Wijnaldum, Naby Keita did decent, but I think he'll do pretty good this season. And their attack, really, does there really need to be any explanation behind them? Probably the most lethal trio in the Premier League and possibly even in the world. Mo Salah, Firmino, and Sadio Mane. But yeah, Liverpool, sorry, but 2nd place. Obviously, that leaves Man City winning the league. Yes, I have City winning the league because I think they're going to bring in some really good signings, and they've already brought in some pretty good backup signings. I do think Nathan Ake will be a backup. Same with Ferran Torres. I do think they're really good players, but they're going to be backups because of that. Because that's how good Man City's team is already. But if they're able to bring in that one center back, Koulibaly or Alaba possibly, I think they'll bring in Koulibaly, but I think Koulibaly will be a really good signing for them. It'll bring a lot of solidity to their team, and it'll be a nice pairing alongside Aymeric Laporte. I think that'll be an incredible team. Their left back is probably the weakest point, but I don't see that as too much of a weak point. Plus, they're gonna want that title back. They're gonna fight as much as they can for it, and I do think they're gonna be able to do it with Pep Guardiola leading them to it. Yeah, they lost David Silva, but I think Phil Foden could fill that role. Maybe not completely, because he's still young, but I do think his mentality will be strong enough for the Premier League and will be able to get a decent amount of assists and a decent amount of goals with more prevalence in that midfield alongside Kevin De Bruyne. Plus, he's going to be spraying passes off to Raheem Sterling, Kun Aguero, who else? Riyad Mahrez, Gabriel Jesus, and as we've seen before, they're really good at scoring. So, yeah. 1st place for Man City. Now, I'm going to go on to who I think will be the top goal scorers, top assisters, and possibly even some players of the season, and ones to watch as well. Now, for the top goal scorers, I don't have them in any order because I really don't know who can finish as top goal scorer. But a few that I'm gonna mention is Timo Werner. I know I said that he'll need a bit of time, But maybe not. Maybe not. He could prove us wrong and score loads of goals in his very first season in the Premier League. But he could also not do as well as we all think. So yeah, it's kind of an unlikely candidate. I think he'll score quite a bit of goals, but I don't think he'll be the top goal scorer. But I can definitely see it. So that's why I have him on the list. Also, Rashford and Martial. I have them grouped up because I think like last season they were quite even in goal scoring abilities and goal scoring and goals in general. But I think Rashford was a bit padded with some penalties that he scored. But I still do think that both of them can do decently well. I'm not sure who will do better. I think that'll be a tough one to predict. But I do think they'll be up there for top goal scorers. Maybe not number 1, 2, or 3, but I think they'll be top 5. At least one of them will be. At least close. Now, also Aubameyang. I have Aubameyang because I do think he's a really good striker. One of my favorite strikers. Very fast and very clinical. Well, not too clinical, but he knows how to score. That's what I'm basically going for. And then alongside him, Harry Kane. Harry Kane has more than proven himself as a top goal scorer. If he can stay fit, he can definitely win it. I can definitely see him winning it. I don't see any outside players coming in to win the Golden Boot, like Danny Ings or Jamie Vardy. I do think they'll both do well, both Vardy and Danny Ings, but I don't see them scoring more than some of the top elite players from the top clubs or bigger clubs. But also, one I forgot to mention, Mo Salah, Sadio Mane. I think they're definitely in with a chance to win the Golden Boot. I can easily see them both scoring possibly more than 20. Maybe both of them, maybe one of them will be close to 20, not quite there. But yeah, they both have a huge opportunity to get the Golden Boot. Now, top assisters. I do have them ranked because I think it's a bit easier to predict top assisters, at least in this league. In Premier League, I think it's a bit easier. I have Kevin De Bruyne finishing first because, probably one of the greatest passers ever in the Premier League. I believe he got either 20 or 21 last season. But yeah, that's really good. And yeah, he's one of the best midfielders, if not the best midfielder in the world right now. So yeah, I think he'll get first. I could be wrong. He could probably get lower or not as high as 10th possibly. But I think he can get a lot of assists as he normally would. And he'll get quite a bit of goals as well. But yeah, top assister, Kevin De Bruyne. Now second, I have Bruno Fernandes. Now he'll have a full season. As long as he doesn't get injured, I think he could fight Kevin De Bruyne for the top assister. Alongside Hakim Ziyech, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Havertz. Those players, all of the 5 players that I've said for this top assisters, I think all of them have a very strong chance of getting the top assister. I do think that Kevin De Bruyne has a bit more quality to that. That's why I have him first. But any of the rest of the 4, they're going to be fighting for good positions. Hakim Ziyech is a bit of an outsider because I think he's more known as a goal scorer. But alongside Timo Werner and Kai Havertz and Christian Pulisic, I think he's going to get a lot of assists. A lot of players on Chelsea are going to get a lot of assists because of all that attacking firepower that Chelsea has. That's why I also have Kai Havertz there. Because Kai Havertz will be sitting a bit deeper and will be passing balls to Ziyech, Werner, and Pulisic. So, all proven goal scorers. Pulisic maybe not as much as the other 2, but still, they're still very competent and very good at goal scoring. So that's why I have both Ziyech and Havertz. I could probably switch them around. Probably should. But anyways. Also Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's shown time and time again that he can get forward and put in a good cross or a good pass that leads to a goal. So yeah, also have him in 4th. But yeah, easily they can all be changed. But yeah, that would just be my ranking for top assisters. Now, player of the season. This is tough. This is really tough. Because, well, it's hard to predict who's going to be the player of the season. Because someone can, out of nowhere, can just have an incredible season. But in my opinion, I think it's going to be debated between these 5. and possibly a few more. But like some that I left out, Mo Salah can be up there. Maybe even a goalkeeper could be up there. I could definitely see a goalkeeper being up there. But yeah, I just think those players would be will shine the most in this league. Yeah. So ones to watch. Here are the ones that I believe should be watched. Some of them might not even be at a club anymore, or club at that time, at a Premier League club at this moment. But I do think if they are there, such as I believe Koulibaly, I have up there. I think he'll be there, and I think he'll be definitely one to watch because I think he'll be the leader that Man City is looking for. And then Christian Pulisic is already there, and I do think he'll have a better season than last. Phil Foden, better season than last. He's gonna have a more prominent role in Man City. So yeah, those are the players that I think y'all should watch, or just be on the lookout for. I think they're gonna have a pretty good season. So yeah. So that concludes my Premier League predictions, both the table and some extras. So yeah, let me know if you guys agree, and we'll see what happens. I'll react to it at the end of the season. So, laters.